First up, I'm going to bring on our first guest. Good morning. Thank you for waiting so long. MJ Bolt. I can call
Good
you
morning,
MJ,
Polly.
right?
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, now, this is a story about your son who's now 27 years old. So
Yes.
take us back through the story of what happened to him, how he was before the MMR and what happened after the MMR.
Yes. Yeah. Preston, he's was born in 97 and pretty typical baby and developing and milestones reaching. And then after the MMR, he stopped talking for like 2 years. He'd started to say a few words. He had started to say mama, dada, a few other things, and then just completely stopped after the MMR. And he had rashes, he had fevers. I think we even had antibiotics the doctor gave him after that. I didn't know the signs to look for. And then he even was in the peds ICU with a bad case of croup after the MMR as well. And so he just had all sorts of issues going on, a lot of gut issues, a lot of things that happened. And it took us a while to figure out, it was autism when he got diagnosed a couple of years ago after that. But yeah, just a lot more developmental delays after that happened.
So MJ, right now, all over the press, they're telling everybody that the MMR is safe and effective. And that's why we're very grateful to you to come on here because we've been doing this for years. They call you, people like you and me, an anti-vaxxer, which is ridiculous because let's talk to me again about your son. He was fully vaccinated up until the point he had his MMR. You didn't question it.
That's correct. That's correct. And somebody had mentioned, something with boys to me. Are you going to vaccinate your boys because of autism? And it was like one person said that to me, and I looked into it and I asked the doctor, and he just poo-pooed it. And so we did. We went ahead and got the vaccinations as they, wanted us to, and did the schedule up until that point. But after that, it took me a while researching all this and trying to figure out. It was Yahoo groups back then. There was no, social media, and all these other moms and these stories of these kids, and especially boys, that had the same thing happen where they stopped talking or had huge issues after having this MMR.
Yeah, I mean, but it's distressing, is it not, to see it's still being touted as a safe and effective vaccine when it destroyed both of our children's lives as it should have been. Describe what it has taken from your son. I know you've done lots of healing with him, but what it has taken from how he was before to how he is now and has been after the MMR.
Well, of course, you want everything for your child. You want to do everything. When it finally dawned on me what had happened, and it was a book I was reading, and it said, the cases of autism were paralleling the American rates in, the United Kingdom, and they had been on the same schedule 10 years later. And it was exactly 10 years later that the rise in autism was going up. I cried for 2 weeks. I cried because I thought, oh my gosh, I could have prevented this. And so anyway, it was, it's very devastating. That was the book I read. I just remember bawling for 2 weeks when it dawned on me what had happened. And it was the MMR that caused this. So, Preston's a blessing. He's such a blessing. I wouldn't be, our lives wouldn't be what they are today. But he's been in special ed. He started in special ed preschool, in 3, because around the age of 3, because he wasn't talking. He's been very delayed in speech. He's amazing. Our lives are, fun, but, probably always live with me. I'm definitely his guardian and full time. And, it's just been a lot of therapies, a lot of challenges, a lot of developmental delays, special ed, special ed, through all of his school life. He works a little bit, would, be great if he could work a little bit more, but definitely impacted our lives in a great way.
Now, the day that he had the MMR, that was the only vaccination he got on that day.
I believe so. I'd have to go back and pull up his records. I probably should do that. One of the things that happened too is after we figured out that he had autism and he got diagnosed, which was a few years later, we did a lot of, like you said, holistic. We looked for a lot of therapies, and at the time, and this was 22 years ago, so this was very new back then. And so we went to some different doctors. We did a toxicity test, and the test came back that he was toxic off the charts in 12 metals. 12. toxic. And number one, mercury. Number two, aluminum, and on down from there. Mercury, of course, thimerosal has been in those vaccines, for a long time. Aluminum, Julie Matthews was just talking about aluminum and how bad it is in our diets. And I think that's what happens. These kids get inundated. It's too much and they can't detox from anything like you and I can possibly. It was just devastating to find out.
Also, MJ, what my husband and I always talk about is that all those vaccines that Billy had leading up to his MMR were damaging him and injuring him. And then you have the MMR and it's just like the final insult where it takes him into a seizure or whatever it may be. So we're not letting the other vaccines off the hook. Since this injury with your son, has it made you look at all vaccinations?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We will not. There's not one I trust. And if I did it again, and if somebody would ask me, I would recommend them not to take any at this point, because I think there are nefarious agents in these things. There's stuff that maybe we don't understand the full impact. Maybe there's some good in it, but there's also so much bad in it. And they haven't been studied. I think Robert Kennedy Jr. has been talking about these vaccinations have not been studied they're a good study, an unbiased study on really what kind of things can happen to these kids. And so, no, I don't trust the government anymore. I haven't for 20 years. I've researched food, our food. We've got junk in our food. We've been trying to figure this out, trying to figure out what's going on with these vaccinations. So when COVID happened a couple of years ago, that's quickly I saw it was going to be about this vaccination. And maybe because of what happened to Preston, it saved us from going through that heartache of getting a vaccination, because we would not do it. And if I had to take my kids and run them to the hills, I would have. If it got to that point, because I just do not trust any of these. And I highly recommend it. It's sad. You see stories every day. It breaks my heart, that of children that are harmed or even killed because of these vaccinations. And you have, I don't understand the doctors, how they don't see this, but they've been schooled and indoctrinated, I guess, by their, studies and their schooling, but it's happening every single day still. And it doesn't need to happen. So no, I don't trust any of the vaccinations. And I question, why are we giving hepatitis B to children, to babies? It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. MJ, if you were a young mum today with a young child and you lived in the measles area of Texas or wherever, what with all the knowledge that you know now, what would you say to the young you with the young child in the measles area?
Well, I would say research measles. From what I understand, back in the day, they'd have measles parties. They were like chickenpox parties, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't a big deal. So if the solution is worse than the actual problem or the disease, we've got stuff backwards. So research that, look into it. And don't trust the media. I'm sorry, you can't trust the media. You can't trust the mainstream media. They're paid by big pharma, and follow the money. I know that sounds all conspiracy theory and stuff, but after, I'm 50 years old now, and we've lived a tough life because of the harm that these things do. So don't freak out, do some research, and don't, jump on the bandwagon that this vaccine is going to help. The worst thing that could happen is, there are some side effects from measles, but I think from what I understand, it's way less than the worst side effects from these vaccinations.
That's right. And we are getting reports that people are panicking. Young mums are panicking and taking their 6 months and up babies to get the MMR. And you can apparently give the MMR if you think you're concerned or you're around potential measles people. So talk about fear, because really when we go to the doctors, we're so bullied, aren't we? My advice is stay away from pediatricians, full stop. Talk about fear to the people, because I don't want people rushing off panicking about measles.
Well, and so much of our media has been, they call it fear porn, and it is. That's never a good place to make a decision. You need to make a decision free of fear, think through it, this is injecting poisons in your kiddo, in your child, in your baby. And don't let this fear drive you into doing something that you will regret the rest of your life. I regret this. I regret having these shots to my sons. I regret it with everything in me. I wish I could go back. Even my son that's normal, developing, and high functioning, who knows how those same shots compromised his system? Who knows what kind of insults that added to your body? And the other thing is, especially during, if there is an outbreak, the last thing you want to do is add another toxicity on this. Like you said, it's kind of the piling up of all these toxins. Julie was talking about the nutrition. So we have all this bad nutrition going on in our world and in our products, especially in the US. And then you add these vaccinations that have all these poisons and toxins. It's the worst thing that can happen. One of the things that you can do is just vitamin D to help, boost your immune system. They say vitamin D is like 800% more effective at fighting the flu than the flu vaccine. Well, do something like that versus jeopardizing your kids' health with a vaccination. Don't let fear run you. Do your research, talk to people, talk to parents. The parents, I have no reason to lie. I have no reason to tell the story. In fact, I didn't tell it for a long time. I kept it under wraps because, you didn't want to be called one of those, unvaxxers or crazy people, right? The news is, they like to really focus on that. But after COVID hit and all of the craziness that happened with that, I had to tell my story. I had to get loud. And it's cost me friendships. It's cost me, some people, colleagues, they don't agree. But I know what we lived. Moms, parents know what's happened to their kids. I saw a sad story just the other day, of a baby that died right after their vaccinations. I mean, there's no doubt. And they're suppressing this news. So just trust your gut. Don't let fear run you. Do your research, talk to parents, find those cases, listen to Children's Health Defense. They're telling you the truth. They're telling you the truth of the nefarious things that are behind these vaccinations.
Yeah, and I love that you brought up that we lose friends and families over this, but truth is more important than that. And you gain new friends as well. I mean, just join our chat on CHD TV. Everybody there is showering each other in love. So, you gain that. Tell us how your son is doing today. What is he doing at 27 years old?
Well, we do a lot of adventures, as you can see in the pictures. We have, he's, like I said, he's a blessing. He loves his sports. He's a Seahawk fan. So we do a lot of stuff together. We do a lot of camping. He's with me most of the time. He's with me, a lot of the time. And we've even gotten political together because this is all part of it, right? So he's doing well. And the other thing that I didn't talk about, there was a lot of gut issues too. And again, I think so fitting, having Julie Matthews on talking about this, but there's so much gut issues. I think that, always pay attention to that. Don't just poo-poo those things. Those are indicators of something else going on. So we've worked through a lot of those issues, and Preston, rides his bike around. He even can ride it to work once in a while. He does work a few hours a week at a great place here in Spokane Valley. They love him. He is a blessing, but he definitely is not he's not independent. He's very dependent on me and his dad and his brother, and but he is a huge blessing always.
Yeah, he looks lovely. Well, MJ, we really have enjoyed having you on, especially watching your cats running around in the background.
They're never up here, and of course they're up here today.
At one point, your bed sort of moved, and I realized that your bedspread was the same as the cat color, and so it wasn't. But anyway, it's always entertaining when we're live.
Yep.
But MJ, thank you for telling your story. It's so important that people know the real dangers of the MMR. And so we truly appreciate it. And we'll write your son's name on our new bus, a nice new bus. So we'll write his name on there. And we do appreciate you speaking out and warning other parents. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Polly, and thank you for all you're doing to share these important stories for people to realize and have their eyes open to the real true dangers of these vaccinations.
Well, MJ, the last thing we want is anyone else to go through the pain. And you've got to admit, as a mother, it's so painful when you realize what's happened and what you've basically done. We didn't mean to, but I don't want anyone to go through that pain.
I don't either. Yeah, I don't either. And I'll talk to anybody. If anybody, wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk, because exactly, if we can save a child from going through that, you want your child to have every opportunity. And these vaccinations steal a lot of those opportunities.
Yeah, and MJ, at least our boys survived, unlike poor Holly. We're going to do Holly's story in a minute, who was killed at age 5.
That's horrific.
Horrific. But MJ, thank you so much. And people, how can they follow you?
I'm on X at MJ Life is Good, and I'm pretty active there. I also have a podcast that I'm doing called Unbolted, but you can find me on X there or on Rumble at MJ Life is Good as well.
All right. Well, MJ Bot, it was amazing having you on this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Polly. Appreciate it. Blessings.